Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Z. Welcome to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. Today, I'm speaking with somebody who I have been following on social media for a very long time. I think she's incredibly resilient and just brilliant, and that is Zibby Owens. So Zibby is with us today. She is an author, editor of the USA Today best-selling anthology on being Jewish, Now, Reflections from Authors and Advocates, as well as 5 other books. As founder and CEO of Zibby Media, she hosts the award-winning podcast Totally Booked with Zibby, owns Zibby's bookshop in Santa Monica, California, runs the Zibby Publishing House, and hosts retreats, a book club, and frequent events for book lovers. She also founded the original essay publication on being Jewish Now on Substack. Zibby currently lives in New York with her husband and 4 children. This is I think, very powerful episode in that we really get into kind of coming into your true self, moving forward after the grief, loss, pitfalls, arguing, drama, all of that, after divorce, and what it looks like on the other side. You know, we talk about being in the thick of it and how difficult it is. And while it still may be difficult after, I think what Zibby touches on are the ways in which she kind of regained her sense of self, regained her sense of control, and slowly moved forward to kind of create this life that she wanted for herself. And it's very kind of just light and it just feels good. And so it really kind of gives people hope that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that it is not always going to be like this. It's going to be hard, but it's not always going to be like this. So I think you're going to find this episode extremely helpful. And just take a listen. Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Z. Welcome to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. Today, we have a very special guest, somebody who I've been following for a very long time, and look at really as just kind of a female role model, to be honest with you. We have Zibby Owens with us today. I'm going to hand it right over to you to kind of dive into who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into it.
Oh my gosh, it's so nice that you call me a role model because my whole path was so unlikely and I felt like I would never get on the other side of what I was going through myself years ago. So to have you say that is so sort of validating and kind and everything. I restarted my life at age 40 after I got a divorce. I had 4 small children and made the decision to take that leap. At the time, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had stayed home with my kids for 11 years and did some freelancing on the side. Prior to that, I had a business school degree. I was in advertising and marketing. I freelanced. I had ghostwritten a book. I always wanted to be an author. I had had a novel rejected, all the things. And I had put my work life on hold to deal with all my kids, who I'm still dealing with, obviously, every day, all the time. And I changed my life when I made this decision. Suddenly, I had every other weekend by myself, or I ended up in a new relationship as well, but the kids were gone and the house was quiet, and I didn't know how to cope with that after so many years of being so in it. And I remember at the time I spoke to a therapist who said, Zibby, you love reading so much. With a good book, you'll never be lonely. Just get back into it. Not that I was ever not reading, but I purposely got into it.
I was going to say, it's on a different purpose, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I fell into books hard. I started writing again for the first time in so long. And I started writing a bunch of parenting essays. I started small. I did not set out to start a media company. Are you kidding? I was just trying to get myself through. And I did that by writing, which is how I always get myself through everything and how I sort my own feelings out. So I started writing a few parenting essays, one of which was A Mother's Right to Sanity. And it went viral on HuffPost. And that encouraged me to keep going. After about a year, I had a bunch of parenting essays. And Kyle, who's now my husband, I was dating at the time, and he said, you should take all those essays and turn them into a book. And I was like, ugh, mom's no time to read books. And I was like, wait, that's funny. That's what I'll call my book. I tried to pitch it to agents. Nobody found that funny. I didn't have a platform. It wasn't on social media. I got advice to get on social and start a podcast. And at the time, I didn't even know what that meant. But I thought, okay, I love books so much. I love authors so much. I'll start interviewing authors. How hard could it be? I ordered the microphone I'm literally still using now. I just plugged it into my computer. You have like a fancier mic, I think. But anyway, and I thought I would just try it. I ended up falling in love with podcasting and talking to authors who I have idolized my entire life. Like the idea that I get to talk to all these heroes of mine that like at one point, John Irving was in my Zoom waiting room. It's like a pinch me experience. But after I talked to all these authors, one thing has led to another. But I started finding ways to grow my podcast. I did an author salon in my apartment, like literally in my living room, and then I started having book fairs in my like dining room, and all of that became eventually my bookstore, which is in Santa Monica. It's called Zibby's Bookshop. And it's like my living room without me all the time. Although when I can, I'm there, but I'm mostly based in New York. And I learned so much about the author experience that I wanted after a while to try to help authors have a better experience. And after years, I launched my own publishing house, which I love doing as well, as a way to boost our author experience and grow our community. We started doing reader retreats and events. I started an online book club during COVID, which continues today and was sort of an offshoot of the salons. I'm saying all this to say, like, one thing has led to another. Mm-hmm. And as things happen in the world, like COVID, I respond. Like October 7th, I respond. Mm-hmm. I started an anthology because I just love collecting voices. When I look to people to help me through everything, like probably you and your listeners. Like I always am reading for the next stage of my life, right? Like I just finished a book about being in your 90s. I mean, I'm just about 50, but you can never be too prepared. It's really good, actually, by Judith Viorst. Anyway, all of this has happened because my life took different turns, and because when I was 25, I lost my best friend on 9/11, who was my college roommate. And that also changed my approach to life in one fell swoop. I saw the person closest to me in the world at that time disappear. And I realized life is short. It's not just some sort of maxim. It is true. And I better live my life as if I'm going to be disappearing myself at any moment. So that's sort of how I live. When I think of an idea, I do it. When I have something on my list, I do it. I don't procrastinate. Along the way, I've become an author myself because I just haven't given up that dream. So I ended up writing my own novel and memoir, a children's book. I had these 3 anthologies. I have been rejected 8 million times, but I just keep coming back. Literally, again, I have a graphic novel on submission that my daughter and I did together. Like that. I mean, I'm always getting rejected. I'm always trying to come up with new things because I just love it, and why not? So my mission now has become sort of helping, which I started with authors. It's extended to the whole Jewish community because we need it. So basically it extended to the victims of the fire in LA. We have a home in the Pacific Palisades. So whenever I feel there's a need to support a group of people, especially one that's affecting me, I try to jump in. I try to defend people who I don't think are having fair treatment in some way. And that's sort of where I've ended up today.
That's it. Okay. I mean, you're absolutely incredible. And I know people listening to this are thinking like, wow, but you said something that I just want to pull out really quickly. It was start small. And I always say to people, especially when you are in a place of just total chaos, you're anxious, you're depressed, there's things going on around you in the world you can't control, and all you can do is really just kind of start small and look for the areas within your domain that you have control over. And it doesn't have to be total control. It's just a tiny bit of control, and going in that direction rather than focusing on everything you don't have control over. Because the truth is between everything you've gone through, you easily, and it would have been easier to just throw your hands up and just not really do much except wait for it to be over. And that's not your personality, right? But at some point you made a decision to start small. And I tell people not even to start small, but to start insultingly small, right? Like you do something where the thought of you're telling me to do what? That anyone can do that. Okay, well then just do that. And then just do the next thing and the next thing. And I have them set something where they're not allowed to go over it, even if they feel compelled to, even if they have the energy to. So I love that you say that, because starting small led you to this entire world you've created, right? You didn't overnight wake up and do this. You start small. So for people listening, where this may sound like a lot, understand this was over time. It was through experiences, and it was very tiny steps along the way. And when you're in situations, and I said this through COVID all the time, when you're in situations where you feel totally out of control, one of the greatest things that you can do is to help others.
Mm-hmm.
Because it gives you a sense of purpose in the chaos. It gives you a sense of control. And once you feel a sense of control, then you're capable of helping others, because then you don't lose yourself. And so I think that was really, really important. So I'm going to take you back a little bit. When you were divorced or going through a divorce, you said you had four kids,
Mm-hmm.
4 small kids. How did you begin to navigate that? Because you had talked about when they weren't with you, it was really difficult and really hard and devastating. There's one thing I read where, seeing their beds empty and the cushions not have, the things that, I was reading it going, I take for granted because I see their beds messy and I see this. And as much as it annoys me, if it wasn't like that, that's kind of a pit in my stomach. And so how did you navigate that initially? How did you figure that out?
I am still navigating it. It's been almost a decade, and I just had spring break and they were with my ex for a week, and I was so depressed. I mean, I call it divorce grief. I've written about this, but it is grief. I am missing them. I feel like nothing can fill this void. And, I know that we're not supposed to be just about our kids, but it's not the same as when my kids are off happy at summer camp, although I miss them. But when they're with my ex and I don't have access to them, and it's just a different thing. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, okay, well, how do I handle it? I'm not saying these are adaptive coping strategies, but I leave my house. This is why this is why we ended up getting another life together in LA where my brother was, because I wanted to be with my nieces and nephew whenever I wasn't with my kids. So, and they're in LA. So I would go to LA and be with them when I couldn't be with my kids, and have all my holidays with them when I couldn't. Oh my gosh, this makes me want to cry. So that's what I did from the start, and I still do. And so I made a life somewhere else. I just really, I know not everybody has the luxury of just picking up and making a new life in another city or whatever. But I do think getting out of the environment, particularly right at the beginning, my mother started calling me at 6:00 on Thursdays. I never asked her to, but I should really say thank you to her. But for years, every other Thursday at 6, as I was walking away and sometimes sort of crying in between cars on the street, she would call me. And what else did I do? Travel plans. And then I just, honestly, I threw myself into work. I threw myself, because I don't view it as work. It's become a company and everything. But when I have a million deadlines, I like living under stress like that. It's sort of happy stress. I try to get right to the line where I can do enough until I get totally overwhelmed and then I'm a puddle. But I turn to friends, I turn to travel, I turn to work, I turn to creativity. Martha Beck talks about how when you are being creative, it uses the same part of your brain as anxiety. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you know this, being a doctor, but this was mind-blowing to me. So I love being creative, even if I'm on Canva. I was just thinking to myself today, gosh, I'm probably spending more time in Canva than I am in Microsoft Word doing my own writing, which is not good, but I love it. It's a quick, even social media, and all of this was slow. We're talking about tiny steps. I look now and I have posted thousands of times. I have done thousands of podcast episodes. None of this was overnight. At the beginning, I had 86 listeners. I was how will I ever grow my podcast? And now I've had millions of downloads. But I remember at the beginning, looking at other people, I'm well, how did she get millions of downloads? Yeah. How do I go from 86 to millions? It seems impossible to me. So the real secret is doing it all the time.
Mm-hmm. It's the consistency.
It's the consistency.
Yeah. Yep. And, when you are depressed and when you're anxious or lonely or grieving, to be able to do something consistently, is really difficult. And there's this period where you have to almost, making a very generalized statement, where you have to accept how you feel and simultaneously move forward. As long as your behaviors are consistent with what you value, and whatever, however tiny they may be, but as long as it's moving you in the direction of what you value, you're always going to be moving in the right direction, even if it's alongside feelings of anxiety or alongside feelings of depression. Because imagine if you waited until you felt less depressed or less anxious about not being with your kids. You said it now, 10 years later, you still feel this way, right?
Yep.
But you feel this way and you have all this amazing stuff around you. So if you wait to feel better, or if you wait to feel less anxious, to do what you need to do, it's never going to get done, which is why doing it in the small increments is so important, as long as it's in line with your values. And I always tell people to do a value assessment. What do you value? And you did that, whether you realize it or not. That's exactly what you did. What do I still love doing? How can I still do what I love doing, maybe in a different context, right? And then it grew, and by it growing, it just made you able to kind of adapt to this new life. I'm not going to say easier because it's not easy, but in a more effective and healthier way.
Yep. And I think knowing what you need to get through, like I know I need external accountability. Like I haven't gone to the gym in like 2 years, like, honestly. And like I will not probably go again, even though I actually used to love working out. I was actually obsessed with it for years. But if somebody doesn't show up at my door and like drag me to the gym, or if somebody's not like waiting on a tennis court for me somewhere, I'm not going to do it. Yeah. So I know that about myself. And so, well, I've deprioritized exercise, but whatever, I'll get back to that. My calendar, if something is on my calendar, I do it. So I sort of live and breathe by my calendar. If I have a podcast, I will read the book by that date. If I have whatever it is, a deadline, the deadline goes in the calendar. And I'm like, I will do that. My whole life is about like, deadlines and structure. So for me, I use my calendar as one of my main tools.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, anytime we have structure, it is, our brains crave it. So anytime that there's structure, it actually makes it easier on us, rather than our brains having to try to kind of figure out what comes next. When our brains can figure out what comes next, it automatically reduces that anxiety. So, it's very helpful. And this goes for kids too. This is why they need routine and structure, even though they hate us for it, but it allows their brains to predict what comes next. So my other question is, so you were home with your kids for years, and then you gradually went back into a career. How did that switch, even though it was over time, how did that switch affect the dynamics of your family? Because one of the things I hear, particularly from women a lot, is that they were home for decades and they kind of felt like they lost themselves, or they didn't know what they want to do, and their purpose was their children. And I always say, like, for women that stay home with their kids, like, God bless you. Like, it's a whole different level of just, I don't know if I could personally have done that. So I always am in awe of people who are able to stay home like that. With 4 kids, and you stayed home with them, and then switching your mindset to this, how was that communicated, and how did that go? Because a lot of times I feel that it ends up, at least the people I work with, it ends up being chaotic.
Well, again, it was a slow shift. And by the way, when you say stay home with the kids, like we were never home. We were at music class. We were at school. I mean, staying home is like such a bizarre way to explain it. Like, we were out and about, and I was involved with all the kids stuff. And I was still really busy doing stuff, but with them. I also did this.
Your career was your children.
My career was my children. Yeah. Yes. But I was very, structure again, like here we're going here and here. It happened so slowly that when I would be recording a podcast, at first it was once a week, and that was all I was doing differently. Right. And so and what I've done with them from day one is explain everything I'm doing, talk about the books I'm putting on the podcast and why, read in front of them, bring them in to everything. I invite them to every event that I do. I ask for their advice on like the book covers that we're publishing, on the book titles. Like, there is nothing that I do that I don't involve them in. When I got nominated for my first Webby Award, I had them like handing out little cards to their friends at school and like on street corners, and like they've been in it. They have watched me. I asked their advice. There was one Jewish situation, anti-Semitism thing that I debated whether or not I should go public with. We had a whole family talk about it. We decided not to. My daughter's like, can't someone else's mom do this? So I decided not to, air that one particular thing because it wasn't something that we all felt comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So
mm-hmm.
I'm just, I'm involving them. When I went on a book tour, I had them make a map of it on a piece of poster board and like draw out where I was going to be. And, we forgot Wisconsin, but it's fine. It was close enough. So I sometimes feel like, look, it's not perfect, right? I'm on my phone a lot, like posting, but I'm like, look at what I'm posting, but still, I'm totally distracted sometimes, but also they've become more independent. They've gotten much older, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't one day say, goodbye, guys, I'm going to school. I'm going to work. And there was no shift like that happened over time. That happened one day to the next. Everything has been a slow ramp with a lot of consultation. And I really do take all of their advice. Like if they don't like a book cover, we go to the next one. So,
I love that. I love that you include them in that. That's so important. It's smart because then again, they feel a sense of purpose with your sense of purpose and they feel needed, right? And all kids need to feel needed, and they feel needed in this life that you have that is kind of separate from them, but you make an effort to include them in it. And, I'm listening to you say this. I'm like, I don't do that enough at all, actually. That's a really great idea, and just little things, social media things that the kids can help with. So this way they feel that they are connected to you, even though maybe at that time you can't be fully present with them.
Yeah. Or with, my daughter made a whole drawing. I was like, how am I I did this big clothing drive through my bookstore for the fire victims, or I don't want to call it victims because I am a victim myself essentially, but people affected by the fires in LA. And my one daughter, did whatever that app is that they use the pencil and draw things on their iPads or whatever. Yeah. She did like a whole Procreate. She did a whole Procreate thing of like, take 5 items, whatever. And she wasn't even in LA with me at the time. She was with her dad, but she knew that I had the sign and I put it on the door. And I don't know, I take them with me however I can.
Yeah.
But it's not perfect. I often get stressed and busy and whatever.
I don't think any of these situations are perfect, right? Any time where there's divorce, separation, it's for kids, there's nothing about it that can be perfect. And I like that that's not even part of your decision-making tree, because I think we see this on social media, right? We see all the things that are presented are the best and most perfect. And it gives off this illusion that somehow we're parenting wrong, or somehow we're horrible wives or horrible mothers or horrible fathers. And that's not always the case, right? We always post what makes us look better. And so I think there's this misconception to begin with. So I love that you say that it's not perfect. I always say that nothing's perfect. And I think it normalizes what so many people are going through that they maybe don't feel comfortable admitting.
I never include my kids on social media. Literally, even like last night, I was like, gosh, I wonder if people think I'm like a horrible mom because they don't see. I only post the moments where I'm doing something big for work that's like worth posting about.
Yeah.
But I also was like, I also don't care. Like, I'm not worried about that. I spend so much time with I'm not, if they think that, they are wrong. So I'm just not going to like fight it. Like,
exactly.
That wouldn't, so.
No, it's a waste of energy and effort. So in the last couple minutes we have, what would you tell women in particular who are in the process of getting a divorce or thinking about getting a divorce, who maybe are not currently active in a career outside, and all of this is kind of piling up on their plate and they're getting very scared? What are some things that you would say to them, or things that you maybe even you wish you had known at the time?
Oh, it's so hard. I was so in it. I'm still in it. It's just, but back then, gosh, I didn't know how I would get to the other side of it all. But I just felt this deep conviction. Like I knew if I didn't, like I just couldn't go on that way. So I had to. I went from like Googling, how do you know when you have to get divorced? Like, seriously, like, anyway, I would say you have no idea, what you're going to get if you stay, but you have no idea what life can bring if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And life is short, and you do have a choice, even a difficult choice to make. And if you've made the choice to start your life over, there are going to be moments of such profound sadness and grief, but that's okay, because there will also be moments of profound happiness, and you will allow yourself to come into who you are as a person, which in a lot of cases is the first thing that gets snuffed out. Not necessarily someone else's fault, even by our own faults, right? We get into situations where we lose ourselves, and that is more of a loss than you can ever imagine. So if you just give yourself the opportunity to try to reclaim yourself and your life, the path won't seem obvious at the beginning. But if you just keep doing the things that you enjoy and really double down on being who you used to be or think you are, one step at a time, you are going to find a new path. Even a path that maybe you could never have imagined at the beginning. And if you don't, you'll never go on that. You'll never see where that path can go. So I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not sugarcoating it at all. It still hurts. I still am like, oh my gosh, but we only get to do this once.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's not a dress rehearsal. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I know you have a book. What book are you promoting? Tell our listeners and where we can find you and your book and all your amazing stuff.
Well, I did write a lot about all of this in my memoir. It's called Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature. And I talk a lot about this. And while I don't go into the details of my divorce or anything like that, I do talk about the feeling of staying home with kids and going to like dinner parties and not knowing even what to say, and not just like being like, yeah, I'm a mom, like, but like, of course we're all 8 million more things than just a mom. Yes. Not that there's anything wrong with being a mom, but like we all bring so much more to the table, literally and physically and whatever, metaphorically. So I think that's probably the most relevant if you're liking the kind of things I'm talking about here. Mm-hmm. If you want an escapist fun read, my novel Blank is also about a mom dealing with all these things, but also touches more on the literary world. My anthology is a collection of 75 essays by Jewish authors about what it means and how it feels to be Jewish now. That's called On Being Jewish Now. I'm donating all those profits to help fight anti-Semitism. So if that's up your alley, that's called On Being Jewish Now. And again, my novel is Blank, and my memoir is Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature. And I even have a children's book called Princess Charming. So if you have a 3 to 6 year old who likes the princess life, this is for you.
Awesome. And where can people find you online, social media?
I'm on Instagram at Zibby Owens. I post like 3 times a day, so you will definitely find me there. And my Substack, you can find at zibbyowens.com. And I send out a newsletter usually once a week, which reminds me I should do one today. And then for Zibby Media, where we have retreats and books and bookstore and all that we offer through our company, that's zibbymedia.com. And there are newsletters for that too.
Great. I will post all of this to the show notes so people can have easy access to them, to reference them. But Zibby, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so happy we got to speak and hear your story and how you came into all of this. I think it's amazing. I think you're insanely resilient. And I think it's going to be really helpful to have people hear your story. So thank you.
I hope so. Thank you so much. You're really great.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. I hope you found it useful, but most importantly, I hope you found it validating. Want to work one-on-one with me? Visit my website at drjamiezuckerman.com to book a personalized coaching session, and be sure to check out my on-demand workshops on topics like co-parenting with a narcissist, life after leaving, anxiety management strategies, and more. Again, that's drjamiezuckerman.com. You'll also find links to my interactive workbooks, merchandise, resources, and newsletter sign-up. Next Up Narcissism is as much your podcast as it is mine. I want to hear your feedback and what you want to hear. So make sure to leave a podcast review wherever you listen or send an email to nextup@drjamiezuckerman.com. Again, that's nextup@drjamiezuckerman.com. Be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to tune in next week to see what's up next on Next Up Narcissism.